Thank you so much, Rob. Movie time. Okay. Oh, perfect. Okay. Fantastic. How is everybody? It is very hot in your lovely city. I'm from Cleveland. It's not as hot over there. Just that's the only difference between the two places. All right. How are we doing? We're going into Shavuos. We're coming out from the whole concept of Yetzias Mitzrayim. We're going into traveling through on the Omer, and we're coming out to this place. And from what we understand, well, Chazal brings down that this was the whole point of everything. Matan Torah was the whole point. It was the whole reason everything was created. The only chance we had doing without it is there's a Zohar that says the only chance we had doing without it is if Adam would have done, but Adam was never supposed to do right, so whatever. According to everyone else, let's say. It was all this. It all came down to this. Yet, when you look at every other Chag that we have, just about every other Chag that we have, and some of them that are only D'Rabbanan, we seem to give it more credence and covet and time than we give Shavuos. What does Shavuos really get? It's like this blip at the end of the year that we sort of are transitioning in between just school and camp, kind of. What real development do we give to Shavuos? And when we look around, it's really not much. I did really bad in high school. Like, really, really bad. Just across the board. I did not go. I heard amazing things about your school. I did not go to a school like this. I'm not going to say where I did go, but I did not go to a school like this. Not from my elementary school. It's not like I'm saying like high school, like I did really well in elementary school. I didn't. I did even worse there. My elementary school was all in Yiddish, so it wasn't totally my fault. I don't know if you could tell by my complexion, but no hablo Yiddish from back then, okay? I didn't know what was going on for the first, and then I started figuring out from, how to say, watch out, that rabbi's about to hit you, all the way through. I started understanding Yiddish a little bit. But high school was and in my school, in the school that I went to, the whole goal, there was no option for doing well. That wasn't on the table for me. The whole goal was avoid punishment at all cost. Just try not to be seen. See, I know I would never have done that, is my point. because I would have gotten suspended, and they would have been like, you did something. Trust me, you did something. No matter what. So it was just fly under the radar. As long as they don't know you exist, to the point that I one time did get suspended. Okay, I got suspended one of the times. And I had just came back from a suspension, but because I was so good at flying under the radar, they didn't realize that what they were suspending me for, I wasn't actually in the city for. I was back home. I couldn't have even done it if I wanted to. And that's how good I was at just flying under the radar. And that's what I understood the best case scenario for me was. Fly under the radar. Now, if you have the unfortunate, which Baruch Hashem none of you guys have, but if you have the unfortunate luck of doing that, you could do it in a school. You could do it in a shul. You could do it in a community, maybe. Baruch Hashem, you live in communities and schools and shuls that wouldn't let you do it, but you could. However, when you start believing that you have to do that with your relationship with Hashem, that the best I can hope for is He just doesn't look at me. Because this is where we started getting to. So many people, when I was working in Nar Sameach, one of my jobs there was to speak to anyone who came in, just came in through the front door. I was an atheist. Now, it's not that they have much better people than me to do that, much smarter people than me to do that. I had a very specific niche that I filled, which is that if the guy came in And he said he's an atheist, and he was very angry about it. So if he really didn't like the other side, it wasn't just his belief system was atheism, and he was loving and peaceful towards everyone, which many of them came in like that. If they came in and they said, I don't even think that there's a God, and you know what? You guys are the Nazis. Like, okay, this guy, just send him over to Bensoussan, and, worst comes to worst, I'll tell him a joke. I don't know. So that was part of my, where I fell into. It's very rare, though, once speaking to any of these people, to number one, find any sort of merit to the argument, but even aside from that, it's very rare to find a person who doesn't want to have anything to do with the Rebbeinu Shalom, nothing to do with Torah, and it's for logical, well thought out reasons. Once upon, when I was a kid, it was because it got in our way of having fun. Nowadays, the more I look around, it's just because no one could be bothered with it. It's just, no one could be bothered. What's the minimum I need to do in order to get by in life? I don't care about having a relationship with Hashem. I don't care about having a relationship with myself. People nowadays could be distracted from the day they're born all the way till they die. There's enough distractions now. We've built it up over time. It used to be just like TV, and like before that it was like just books, and if you wanted to watch a movie, you had to go to like a theater, you had to buy a ticket. It was a whole thing. People couldn't be distracted for too long. They finally hit their 20s and they were like, listen, there's got to be more to life than this. Nowadays, we have alternate realities that we live in online. No one in here, obviously, but I'm saying there are people out there, trust me. I know you guys don't know about it, but trust me. That they completely live a different life. And it's one that they get to design and they get to build. And they could basically tell everyone else how they want to be spoken to. Like, imagine that. You go around life and you're like, I'm not going to even allow anyone to challenge me anymore. So I'm always right. This is amazing. It's completely unfulfilling, but it's amazing. I could go through life doing this. This is one of the saddest parts of where we are today. Now, don't get me wrong. We happen to be in an amazing place. We're in an amazing place because we have more opportunity to exercise Bechira in a 5-second window than Jews 60, 70, 80 years ago. Jews 60, 70, 80 years ago, 90 years ago, they weren't allowed to be non-Jews. All the golf clubs, wherever those things were, country clubs, they didn't let Jews in. A Jew couldn't go into any business. A Jew couldn't just do whatever he wanted. He sounded different. He looked weird. No one let him in. Nowadays, you can go right now. Non-Jews will take you in open arms, and they'll make a Netflix special about you, about how you escaped the cult of God and all that. It'll be amazing. Yet you choose to stay. And the Yetzer Hara hijacked one very important nakuda of that. And he makes you think that you stay, and that you do, and that you operate because you're afraid. But really you don't feel, really you don't mean, really you don't. Now shine under any light as Yetzer Hara falls apart. But how does he really completely fall apart? Through the gift that we were given, Shavuos. Shavuos is about Matan Torah, but it's not just about Matan Torah. We have Simchas Torah for actual Torah. What do we need Shavuos for? So there's many different answers. But we use Shavuos in a very important way. Shavuos is a reminder. The Mishnah in Avos says, when Hashem gave us the Torah, it was a Kli Chemda. It was a gift of love. And He let us know it. Hashem chose every single one of us not to be the same. Not because we're supposed to be alike. We're not. One of the reasons we dress alike is because we're not supposed to be alike. You're going to be different than each other. You have to know how to be different. How to be different is not in the way you dress. It's not in the way you look. You have to intrinsically be different. You have something unique inside of you. Don't get distracted with the outside. Dress like everybody else. The way people are going to know who you are is because of who you are. For real. What's really inside there. What does Torah, though, give us? To me, when I was in those conversations, one of the most compelling arguments that I felt I could use is the idea that if you go, I had a I'll tell you guys that story a different time, but I had a pastor at my table one time. You know how well versed you guys are, but Jews don't have pastors. Okay, this guy belonged to a different religion, and he was converting to be a Jew, but he was still a pastor. I think still with title pastor, and he was at my Shabbos table, and I was talking to him, his wife, and I said to him, I was like, "What happens in your sect of Christianity when someone asks a question?" I'm like, because you have all these questions, you had all these things. What happened when you went to ask? And he was a Texan. He said, "Well, Yossi, there ain't no asking where I'm from." So I said, "What does that mean? There's no asking where you're from?" He said, "That's devil talk." I'm like, "I'm sorry," which happened a lot over the course of the meal, and it was just because of his accent. But he said, "That's devil talk." I said, what does that mean? He's like, devil talk are things you are not allowed to talk about. Not that it's inappropriate or that it's we don't talk about it publicly, but you can speak about it privately. We don't talk about it. He said nowadays they started getting on board that they talk about it a little bit. He said, but for me, he's like, never. You don't. That's devil talk. You're not allowed to talk. That's not a question that we allow. Yet if you look at the Rambam, he's asking all these questions. Look at a Daf Gemara. Look at one block Gemara and see how many Tanoim, how many Amorai, how many of them are arguing with each other. Not only that, how many of them are asking questions, really deep questions, it's like they want the Torah not to be real. They're bringing from steers there. How could it be this if this is saying differently than that? You can't have a shar if it's not nagla. You can't. How are you doing that? You're poking holes all over your own system. It's a really bad idea. Not only that, when you go to a Beis Medrash all around the world, who's the best guy in a Beis Medrash? The best guy in a shir. The best guy in a shir is not necessarily the guy who has all the answers. It's the guy who asks the best question. A guy who could stump the Rebbe, where the Rebbe says, "Oof, you asking good?" We even have a term for it. You're asking good. I don't know. That's the best guy in the shir. Because that's what we value. We value a certain amount of MS. Who was this MS given? Who was this ability to question given to? I learned this when I didn't see start time, so I don't know end time. Just I learned this when I was very young. I was about 8. Everyone's here from maybe the Rebbeim. I assume everyone here grew up here, unless you didn't, which is an option, I guess. But I came from I'm a small town person. I came from a little town in New York called Brooklyn. It's not many Jews. It's a joke. There's a lot of Jews in Brooklyn. Okay. I think Brooklyn now is out of town. That's it. That joke's not going to make it. So there was a little, there was a mall in Brooklyn called King's Plaza, right? Jonathan, King's Plaza. Jonathan never went to King's Plaza. Guys like me go to King's Plaza. If you look like Jonathan, you're that good looking, you don't go to King's Plaza. I got away. They thought I was there to clean up. It wasn't. So I went to King's Plaza. My mother brought me to King's Plaza. She used to bring me and my brothers. I think they had a Macy's there or something. I don't even remember. She used to bring me and my brothers. And back in the day, there was no cell phones and there were no cars. No, there were cars. There was no cell phones. There was no, there's no way to entertain a kid if you're in a store with them. But we used to be afraid of our parents. And what I mean that is, I'm not saying as opposed to you guys that don't have, a Yiras Harim, I'm sure you do. We were legitimately afraid of our parents. They would beat us up, and everyone else in the store would just be like, "Kid probably deserved it." No one would stop any child abuse from happening ever. Go home, ask your parents, they'll back me up on that. So we used to go, And, my mother would be like, stay here. And we would just stand there because, again, you don't want to, until she would turn around and like start shopping. And then, you start hitting each other. If you have brothers, So my brothers had me convinced, they used to have these low, round racks of clothing. My brothers had me convinced that we were going to play a game. And I was going to go into the rack. And my job was to hold all the clothing from inside the rack. And if somebody came to pull a thing, I would like pull them from the inside. And they would make like ghost noises. And then we would try to convince people that something was haunted. All right. Don't try this at home. Because it doesn't work. I'm just going to let you know. You can't see anything from inside the rack. You have no idea where they're coming from. People are constantly pulling hangers from behind you. All right. So I'm sitting in this rack waiting, and then I realized, I think my brothers, they're older than me, I think they were just trying to get rid of me because they sent me in, and they're like, and we'll stand on the side making the noises, and they just disappeared. I have no idea where they went, but they had me just like waiting in that rack. And so as you do, I'm a little kid with a big imagination, currently, so back then I was even littler with a big imagination, and I got bored, obviously, as you do. And I came up with a different scenario in my head. I think I was a Ninja Turtle. I don't remember, but I was fighting definitely other ninjas. And I don't know if you know this about being a ninja, but the best thing to do if you want to sneak attack on someone is you jump out and you scream really loudly. So that's what I did. Anyway, it made sense. And I jumped out. I was like, whoop-ah! Something. I yelled out some sort of. And all of a sudden I hear someone behind me go, Lordy, like I scared someone. Like, Lordy, Lord, Lord. I turn around. And I can't in 2023 aptly describe this person, but I thought she was a rack of clothing. I at the first turn around, I thought it was just one that was like wrapped up in something, and then I turned back around and there was a woman that was about the size of this thing, just wider, but this height, and like I think it was a woman. I don't know. And she turns around and she had like this very intense face. And I'll never forget this. It haunts my nightmares. She had these little arms, and she was eating a Cinnabon out of like a trough. I don't know how to, like she took the Cinnabon like waste bin and was just like holding it. And she had these very long nails. And as a little kid, I must have been, I don't know, 7, 8 years old. I'm looking at this lady, and I can't for the life of me imagine how in the world, because she took the piece of Cinnabon, but it was stuck in the cage of her nails. I'm like, how is she going to get that from the inside? And sure enough, she never broke eye contact with me because she was upset at me. But she wasn't going to stop eating the Cinnabon, obviously. So she broke off her Cinnabon. She's looking at me, and then she lifted it, and she let it go, and she would just catch it in her mouth. This was this very interesting woman. And she looks at me, and she goes, why you scaring me? I'm like, again, Yiddish maybe now at that point, but I didn't. I was like, what? She's like, what's on your head? I'm like, I'm sorry. She's like, what is on your head? And I was like, it's a yarmulke. And then she made a noise that I can't make. I don't know what it is. I have no idea. But it like clicked or something. It was something. And she was breathing very heavy. It was like there was a workout involved in all of this for her. Just acknowledging that I was there was too much for her to. And she goes, someone doesn't want me saying the end of the story. No, she goes, what's on your head? I'm like, it's a yarmulke. And she makes this weird noise, and she goes, I know it's cold, but what does it represent? I'm like, I'm sorry? She's like, what does it represent? I'm like, oh. And I remember I was a little kid, but I was sitting there, and a little kid going to this elementary school that I went to, the worst thing you could do is make a Chil Hashem. And the way you make a Chil Hashem is that you make Goyim think that you're an idiot. None of that's true, by the way. But this is what I had convinced in my head. So I said, I'm like, I can't think of anything. I must have been there for I don't know how long trying to think of something. And then I remembered someone told me I had to do it Yeras Hashem. So I just yelled out in the middle of the Macy's in Kings Plaza, it's a fear of God! And I'm just like this little 8-year-old kid alone. She left at that point. She didn't get far. There's no way she got too far. She had to sit down like that. But I was yelling out like, fear of God! Like I had a. Then on the way home, I asked my mother. I was like, why do I wear a yarmulke? Like, why do we wear yarmulkes? And my mother was like, how long was I gone? became an atheist in the 8 minutes I went to get a. She's like, what do you mean? What do you mean? Why do you wear a yarmulke? So I said, why? What's the reason behind it? And my mother, I owe her till today for this. She turns to me and she goes, Yossi, I have no idea. Ask your father, but whatever happens, know that that's a beautiful question. Always ask questions. And I owe this lady in Kings Plaza. I mean, she died a day after that. There's no way she was going to exist anymore. But the truth of it, though, I owe her something so big from inside of myself, off of the fact that she gave me this gift. You want to know what Torah really is? You want to know what Shavuos really stands for? It stands for the fact that Hashem chose every single one of us, and not one of us are duplicitous, not one of us are doubles, not one of us are replaceable with each other. The Yetzer Hara's trick is to make you think that that's not true. You're irrelevant. That's what he wants from you. Just be irrelevant. Fly under the radar. Don't make any trouble. How do we break that Yetzer Hara and create who we are? By asking as many questions about who we are as possible. That's what Torah is. It's a search for emes, and the only way to get to that emes is by asking questions. What's the point of getting to that emes? To figure out who we are. Why? Because that's the entire reason that we're here. Is we have something that we could give to Klal Yisrael that nobody else has. That not one other person would be able to give to Klal Yisrael other than us. When the Rebbeinu Shalom gave us the Torah on Har Sinai, he gave it to us saying, I need every single neshama that's here in order for this world to exist. Every one of our neshama were there. When it was given over to you, Hashem was saying, this cannot exist anymore without you. That's a job we have to take seriously. That's the job that we use on Shavuot. Guys, thank you so much. Chag Sameach. Bezrat Hashem. Hope to see you guys again soon.